I am the Assistant Secretary of the Maryland Department of Commerce, and welcome to a great project, a wonderful project in what is known as Maryland's largest and most visited national park, and that's the Canal National Historical Park. Let's give that a round of applause. Now, it is my great joy to always be here in Washington County when I can, and to be here at my favorite park, don't tell the other ones, here at the Canal National Historical Park. And we have a great superintendent that I have the pleasure of introducing. Let's give a huge, rousing round of applause for Tina Capetta. Come on up here, Tina.
Thank you, Tom. Let's get myself situated here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you so much for joining us here on this beautiful day. As Tom said, I'm Tina Capetta, and I have the pleasure of being superintendent here at the Canal. So some special guests I'd like to thank for being with us here today. Senator Cardin, thank you for honoring us with your presence. Congressman Trone, thank you very much for being here with us. Nan, where are you? We've got Nan Mann from Senator Van Hollen's office. You've already met Assistant Secretary Reifert. Thank you for being here. And to all of our state officials who are with us here. It's hard to find people once you scatter. To our Washington County Commissioners, to President Barr and to Commissioner Klein, thank you for being here. To Delegate Valentine, who apparently I went to high school with. Who would guess? It's a small world. And to Elizabeth Hughes and the staff from the Maryland Historical Trust. We've got some folks here from our Federal Advisory Commission. Boy, it is really hard once people start to scatter. Commissioner Nelson and Brinkley. There you are. Thank you. If you've got any others, please forgive me if I missed acknowledging you. And Kim Hall, the National Capital Regional Director, my boss. So, thanks to all of you for joining us today. So, it may not come as a surprise to any of you, but I'm one of those people who seeks inspiration by looking to the past. So, in thinking about what I wanted to say today, I looked into history for some perspective. 200 years ago, some of you may know I have a little thing for bicentennials. 200 years ago, citizens held the first Chesapeake and Ohio Canal Convention to mobilize public interest and generate political support for the stream of passage to Western wealth. But perhaps most prophetic was President John Adams in 1828, after breaking ground for the canal, who, when asked for a toast, said, "The Chesapeake," there's Kim Hall, hi. When asked for a toast, said, "The Chesapeake and Ohio Canal. Perseverance." Now, I have to take a second to tell you this story about John Adams. Forgive me if you've heard this before. So President Adams goes to this groundbreaking ceremony, and apparently he's not super comfortable with public speaking. He goes to the ceremony, he gets the spade, tries to stick it in the ground to draw some earth, and he hits something under the ground. Maybe a tree stump or something like that. Can't do it. Tries again. Can't do it. So he takes off his jacket, rolls up his sleeves. Takes him 4, maybe 5 attempts until he finally gets some earth. And as you can imagine, that was quite the icebreaker with the crowd. So he went on to make his remarks, but he said it made everything much more comfortable to give his remarks. So it was rather appropriate to him when he's asked on the way back to Washington to make the toast in saying perseverance. And I think many people here, especially those of us who work on the canal and those of us who have worked here, whether you're a former employee or whether you are a contractor, you understand that this special place takes perseverance. As I read through, I told you I like to look back. As I read through the canal reports over the years during the construction, and it took 22 years to construct this place, the reports are filled with challenges, such as flooding and high water, increased labor and material costs, disease, labor shortages, strikes, violence, lawsuits and land ownership challenges, injuries, death. It was tough. It was really tough. I have to say, it made me feel much better about my job. In his speech at the dedication ceremonies opening the canal to navigation at Cumberland in 1850, William Price, one of the canal company directors, best summed up the plight of the contractors as follows. He said, "Many of us were young when the great work commenced, and we have lived to see its completion only because Providence has prolonged our lives until our heads are gray." You're not gray yet, are you? I think you'll learn today that this was a really tremendous project on the canal, and it took many hands to make it successful. It's one of the biggest projects that was ever undertaken here in the park. The CCC worked in this park after the Great Floods of 1924 and 36. Yeah, 1924 and 1936. After the canal had been dormant and gone out of operation in 24. A unit consisting of 2 African American CCC divisions were deployed. CCC Camp 325 operated from June of 1938 until April 1st, 1942. And CCC Camp 333 operated from October of 1938 until November of 1941. Of course, all this was interrupted by World War II, but they worked on the lower 22 miles of the C&O Canal to restore it and to make it a public park, because its value was still seen even after it was no longer a working canal. Today you'll hear about the second largest undertaking since the Civilian Conservation Corps. And I'm really proud to stand here in front of you today and thank the people who worked on this project, particularly this man to my right, who you'll get to hear more from today. So I'd like to turn it back over to Secretary Reifert. Assistant Secretary Reifert, I promoted you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah.
Thank you. Let's please give the superintendent a round of applause. Tina, thank you so much. And it's good to have so many wonderful elected officials here with us today. Delegate, good to see you. And Commissioner Klein, Commissioner, good to see you in the shade. I am glad that it's a warm day today, Senator. The last time you and I did a ribbon cutting or a grand opening for the big Slackwater section was October 2012. It was 47 degrees and the wind was brisk. And instead of cutting a ribbon, I suggested we build a fire. It was a brutal day. Remember that? But it was the grand opening of the Big Slack Water section. Folks, we have a couple of other people to introduce. Nick Redding is here. Where's Nick? The president of wonderful Maryland Historic Trust. I love Nick Redding. He's doing so much for the Maryland 250 Commission. Thank you for everything that you do. It is my pleasure now to introduce the director of the Maryland Historical Trust and a wonderful civil engineering guy I just met today named Joe Reed. Elizabeth, could you come on up here? And let's get things started with a fun part of this morning. Elizabeth, the microphone is yours.
Thank you so much, Tom. Thank you. So, good morning. My name is Elizabeth Hughes, as you heard. I'm the director of the Maryland Historical Trust and Maryland State Historic Preservation Officer. I'm so excited to be here today to present the 2023 Maryland Preservation Award for Excellence in Historic Preservation and Sustainable Design to the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal National Historical Park. Thank you to everyone who's come out today to share in this celebration. I have to say, here in Maryland, I served for a number of years as the president of the National Conference of State Historic Preservation Officers. And I just feel so lucky here in Maryland to have such great support from our Maryland Congressional Delegation for Historic Preservation and from all of our elected officials who are here who recognize the importance of our shared heritage. Since 1975, the Maryland Historical Trust Board of Trustees has honored the outstanding preservation efforts of individuals, businesses, nonprofit organizations, local governments, and others who protect, steward, and share the historic places and cultural heritage that make Maryland unique. And we're joined today by one of our trustees, Tom Batanza, an alum of the National Park Service, who is here to celebrate with us as well. The National Park Service is doing tremendous work to ensure the long-term preservation of the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal towpath through innovative and sustainable design solutions. This project is a model in the way that it balanced the need for sustainability while at the same time preserved historic fabric that's critical to the visitor experience of this historic transportation resource. This section of towpath has experienced significant and repeated damage and degradation from numerous Potomac River flooding events over the years, as we heard from the superintendent. Through its Section 106 consultation with the Maryland Historical Trust and other parties, the National Park Service developed solutions that would not only avoid, minimize, and resolve adverse effects to the historic property through sensitive project design and materials selection, but also help to protect this vulnerable resource from further flood-induced damages and improve public access. We know that challenges like these are going to be more and more common as our environment continues to change. Finding creative and sustainable design solutions is essential for the survival of these heritage resources. Thank you to the National Park Service for identifying a way to ensure that this section of the towpath is preserved for future generations. On behalf of the Maryland Historical Trust, I'm pleased to present this Excellence in Historic Preservation and Sustainable Design Award to the lead civil engineer at the park, Joe Reed, on behalf of the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal National Historical Park. So congratulations, Joe, and thank you for your commitment to finding creative and sustainable ways to preserve history for the future.
Good morning. Well, the cat's out of the bag. I am an engineer. I'm not great at speeches, but here I am. So I did want to, again, thank you guys on behalf of the National Park Service for this amazing award for the project. Thank you, Director Hughes, for coming out, Senator Cardin for making the trip out, Congressman Trone, Commissioner Barr, and all the other honored guests, including Regional Director Kim Hall. And I was going to take a couple minutes here and tell you guys a little bit of specifics about the project. It is behind us, and I am quite a fan of it, so it's good that I'm here. So McMahon's Mill to Lock 42 project, it was a very unique project, and there were many opportunities to address the challenges associated with it. It is about a 0.9 mile length of towpath. It starts right about here and goes upstream up the Potomac River, and it is a critical link in maintaining the continuity of the park's 184.5-mile long primary trail system, and also all the associated historic features that were originally constructed over 184 years ago during the original construction phase, during 1836 to 1839. Many of you guys remember the previous section of towpath, and you guys already talked about it a little bit, right, with the ribbon cutting in October of 2012, which started here and went downstream. We refer to that as the Big Slackwater Project, and that's why we had to differentiate. This was McMahon's Mill to Lock 42. This is really a continuation of the great success that they had with that project in shoring up and preserving the remaining 0.9 miles of open water in the Potomac River that carries the towpath. And this Big Slackwater portion of the towpath is one of only two of the areas in the entire canal system where the boats were deliberately navigated outside of the safety of the canal and onto the mighty Potomac River. And in this case, the Potomac River was impounded by the historic dam number 4, which is downstream. And that's why if you guys are walking around on the site and you look around and you say, hey, where's the canal? I thought this was the C&O Canal. That's because in this area, the canal is the river. That's what it was used for navigational purposes up until 1924. So even going back into 1833, when the original canal engineers came along and came up with the designs for the full system, they realized there's these large outcroppings of bedrock here, and they called them Galloway's Cliffs, and they're conceivably very large and made out of limestone, and they said, we really can't afford to put a canal here, so we're going to build the towpath, use the slackwater navigational capability, and get the cargo and the equipment and everything moving through there. So not only was the absence of the canal here and the presence of the river a great challenge for their construction, but it also gave us some great exercises in creativity during construction. It's always great to have challenges that really make your mind start to work and come up with some creative solutions for things. So, the river was ever present during construction and also over the past 184 years since its original construction. And that was one of the main drivers for all the issues that we had with many of the historic structures through here. Many of the speakers already mentioned them. We had sinkholes that were occurring all the time, erosion, slope failures. We were missing a lot of portions of the stone walls. We had a lot of weak sections that we had go underwater. Sometimes we'd go underwater up to a dozen times a year. And that was even during just a minor flood. This area is a really significant resource for everyone living around here, as well as regionally and nationally. We have a lot of culturally significant features around here, abounding natural resources along this sensitive riparian corridor, full of rare, threatened, and endangered species. Also had freshwater mussels that we had to move prior to the construction stage. And so out of the 5 million visitors that come out to the park, there's somewhere around 150,000 that use this park specifically. So it was a big deal to us to try to mitigate all the safety concerns for the visitors and preserve the natural and cultural resources for the current and future generations. So thinking specifically about the type of award that the Maryland Historical Trust was so nice to send our way, thank you again, I really boiled it down into some of the key pillars in design, and I boiled it into 3 spheres of thinking in terms of how we address sustainability and historic preservation. And the first one was strength. We wanted to make something all throughout the design process and even during construction that was strong enough to stand up against all the elements. And specifically out here, the biggest element you have to deal with is water. And that's the weather and the storms on the Potomac River. Sure, it looks nice and calm today. Come out here during a big flood event, a couple times, at least once, the water was up over that bridge right there. So it was probably 13 feet taller than it was today. So we had a lot of concern. We wanted to make sure it lasted during all the storms on the Potomac River. That includes ice jams, debris flows, and when you think about debris flows, think of trees the size of buses coming down the river with all the great magnitude of forces that come with it. And we also had the more subtle loadings of the continual wave wash from all the recreational users and the flat water portion of the Potomac River out here. All that was incorporated into applying the modern standards and codes as we went through and sized the wall foundations and the cross sections and got into the intimate details about loose stones here and wanting to put more tight applications of things there. So to accomplish a couple of those things, we founded all the foundations for the new walls on bedrock. When you're an engineer, it's one thing to build on an unsure foundation. It's another thing when you're on bedrock. That's the gold standard. So we went down to bedrock and founded all our walls on that. We used limestone that was sourced from 3 local quarries. And that limestone, the type of geology that is actually 3 to 4 times stronger than your typical 4,000 pound per square inch concrete that we use in modern construction. We also maximized the use of dry laid stone walling techniques. So as you guys visit the site later on, you'll see that there's a couple different types of stone construction. Some are mortared sections where we actually tied into existing features and tried to mimic and make compatible surfaces on top of a lot of the salvaged wall portions. And we raised them up or shored them up and used mortar, or we used dry laid stone wall, which actually results in a more adaptively dynamic revetment system to change and see fit and adjust to all those forces from the river. We also designed walls that have a robust cross-section, and we did a lot of, our structural engineer did a lot of modeling on that. We also worked on making sure we had a free draining fill zone behind the walls, so that as the water fluctuates on the river, the water could move out of the walls and not put inordinate amount of pressure on the wall. We tried to do as much as we could to make sure that these are strong and sustainable walls, including making sure that there was a filter behind the walls so we don't see any of those pesky sinkholes rear their heads again. One of the last things that we did is we did raise the wall, not only in profile, also the towpath, to try to minimize the number of times that it does go underwater and we have to close the trail down. But we also wanted to use a type of towpath blend that's more erosion resilient. So as the water does come up, there's always a bigger flood out there. This part of the project will go underwater still. It just won't go underwater as much or as frequently. We did use a more erosion blend on that to minimize the amount of washout on that. The second pillar that we focused on was function. We wanted to make sure the design and construction of the project was able to perform the required tasks. And the main one was retaining the fill of the towpath, resisting the scour energy from the river, mitigating the safety issues to park visitors. A big one was preserving the significant historic structure and resource that it is, and also restoring access for the operations, emergency responders, and maintenance vehicles. What that entailed was shoring up all the existing walls by filling in voids, and there was a lot of intimate inspections that happened over and over again to make sure we got as many as we could. We also made sure that we went down to competent foundation material, whether it was the bedrock or tying into competent foundation of existing walls. We also raised the walls up to reduce the overtopping frequency. And we also established that 8-foot wide towpath, which as you guys walk it or travel it, you'll notice it's nice and roomy, big enough for 2 bicycles to cross, and it was a far cry from what it used to be, which was sometimes a single track lane, and you might get whacked with a tree branch or two. So we tried to incorporate all those things in an effort to establish a safe corridor for all the trail users. And the last pillar that we focused on kind of smashed a whole bunch into this one. It was aesthetically pleasing, resource sensitive, and sustainable. We wanted to make sure that we had something that met the Secretary of Interior standards for preservation, compatible with the existing landscape, sensitive to the existing resources, and complies with all the applicable regulations and sustainable into the future. And during the whole design and planning, it kept coming up and it kept coming out of my mouth. I don't want to come back here before I retire. And that's a long time from now. So we wanted to make sure that it was built to last. And that included including a whole bunch of different things, such as we salvaged 962 freshwater mussels prior to river construction to move them out of the limit of disturbance. We did a lot of consultation with different agencies, like the Maryland Historical Trust, made sure we met all of the requirements of NEPA, which is our environmental regulation, and also the National Historic Preservation Act, Section 106, as we like to refer to it. We were always cognizant of the rare, threatened, endangered species, and that included making sure that as we're working the diverse riparian corridor that it is, sometimes that included trying to minimize or limit disturbance. Sometimes it included trying to relocate some of those. And we tried to use as much of that stone masonry throughout the project as we could so that it was very similar to the existing character of the historic resource. So altogether, this is a true team effort. I'm up here, I wish we could have like 30 more chairs up here for all the team that's out. They traveled far and they're all here. So we had a lot of people involved in the whole project's life cycle. And there's this saying that we have at the C&O Canal that it's 184.5 miles of adventure. And this 0.9 mile stretch is no surprise. It was an adventure every single day of the project. And it didn't end at the normal clock out, clock in times. A lot of times that adventure continued into the late night, and we had a couple late nights where I was actually on 11:30 at night calls with the design team during solicitation. It went into the off hours, it went into the weekends. It even extended into the holidays, whenever I would have to call Tina for things that are happening over the holidays. So it was a never-ending adventure, and I'm very thankful it ended up like it did. But it all ended up as it did because of the great teamwork of the project delivery team. They maintained their flexibility and continued to adapt to whatever conditions were prevailing, whether on the site or in the design or even back in their home offices that they worked on different things. So at this time, I want to recognize some of the major entities that are here with us that worked on the project and help us deliver this for the National Park Service, for really the American people. And so as I go through this, I'm hoping everybody, as I say your organization, you can stand up, stay standing up, wait till the end, and then we'll clap. And then once we're done with the whole ceremony, don't disappear because we want to make sure we get pictures and everything else with you. All right? So at this time, I'm going to go through, and I wanted to first bring up the Denver Service Center people, if you guys can stand up. So today we have David with us, and Paula, and Majid, and they're from our Denver Service Center. Some of them work over 1,600 miles away out of Denver, Colorado, which made it particularly challenging for them, but they did help us tremendously by managing the construction contract and the design and everything else out of National Park Service Center of Expertise for design and construction. So the next people we have are the people out of the NPS regional office, and a lot of the things that it was great for them was they had done this once before. Dan and Chuck, if you guys want to stand up, they had been the engineering team that had worked on Big Slackwater right down here that had finished back up into 2012. So there's a lot of sage advice that came out of these guys, the lessons learned. We didn't have to reinvent too many wheels, and we could, really build on all their learning experiences throughout this whole process. So I wanted to thank them. And then we also had the park staff, and the park staff, they were critical for making sure that we could provide all the technical advice and the historic stone masonry. So thankfully we picked up Pat. Where's Pat? Pat's around here somewhere. We have a stonemason in the park again, so we could tap all his expert knowledge on that. We're doing all these walls. Susanna was there every step of the way as our civil engineer. There's many a cold day out on the boats where we could barely even take notes because it was so cold. And then we also had all our compliance staff who helped us with Section 106 and NEPA and endangered species and all these other things like that. So Andrew, I saw you were out there. Andrew Landsman, yeah. And unfortunately, our good friend in Cultural Resources, Justin, is not here, but hopefully he'll watch the video later on and he'll be able to relive this in person. And there was a lot of behind-the-scenes people at the park and all over the place that would help us with things like safety, like John Adams, and the law enforcement when we had different things happen around the site, and even when we were responding to emerging situations, and all the budget support that we had for executing a $21 million construction project. And everybody who answered all those phone calls about detours and public inquiries and all the other things that happened, truly wanted to thank everybody at the park. So everybody who's at the park, whoever heard McMahon's Mill or said it, thank you. So, and from there was also quite a few people that helped us execute it that were outside what we call the green and gray. And that includes the landscape architecture and civil engineering design that was done by VHB out of Williamsburg, Virginia. So Doug and Logan, if you guys want to stand up, great. We also had the structural engineering that was done by SGH, which was from the Washington, D.C. and New York offices, which they were on their way. I don't know if they came, but if they did, Matt and Adam. And then we also had the prime construction contractor here who's been working at this project out in the field since August of 21 and up until March of 23, and Randall and Keith from Kiewit Infrastructure South. Altogether, they ended up placing over 7.7 million pounds of stone masonry, and they used up to 6 excavators, 2 skid steers, 7 marine vessels. Remember, we're on a very narrow band of towpath here, so at one point they had 5 barges running, 2 tugboats, 1 to 2 support boats, and there at one time they had over 28 stone masons working in the stone and putting it all together with machinery and big stones swinging the size of small cars. And they did quite an effort getting all this to come together and delivering it on time for the National Park Service. And the other folks that were there as well for on-site construction management, we had Alpha Corporation, and also we engaged Tom, if you want to stand up, for the National Park Service Historic Preservation Training Center. We tapped the experts over at HPTC out of Frederick to help us with the on-site day-to-day quality assurance. And of course, I don't want to leave out any of the other coordinating agencies. That was a tremendous benefit working with Maryland Historical Trust, Maryland Department of Environment, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for all our permits, and the Maryland Department of Natural Resources for all the coordination we did for all the resource things. So again, I wanted to thank you guys all for the award. I'm sorry I went over with my time. So thank you everyone who's standing up and everybody else who's helped us with the project. And if you have time afterward, we'll go through with the really lengthy explanation with colorful pictures of the whole construction process after the event's over. Thank you again.
Ladies and gentlemen, Joe Reed. Let's give him another round of applause. Wow. I don't know if you know this about Joe, but just this past year, 2022, he was named the Federal Engineer of the Year. Let's give that a round of applause. Isn't that tremendous? They grow them good here in Washington County. I also want to recognize a couple of folks that are here in the audience. She is the Executive Director of the Heart of the Civil War Heritage Area. Liz Chateau is here. There's Liz. And representing one of our partners in tourism from the Hagerstown, Washington County Convention and Visitors Bureau, the award-winning Tiffany A. Halt is here, also representing the C&O Canal Association. So thank you for being here, Tiffany. It is my pleasure to introduce our next speaker. The other day, I opened up the newspaper in the morning and I read a headline that said that U.S. Senator Ben Cardin was announcing that he was choosing not to run for election again. I saw this in the paper. Is that true? Did you know this? And Senator Ben Cardin has been a true friend of both national parks in Maryland and also tourism here in Maryland. He has been a champion for tourism, and he fought very hard for the Big Slackwater project and fought very hard for this $21 million project. He has been a great friend of Washington County. In fact, I don't know if you know this, 4 miles from here, there was a man in 1798 that moved. He was an immigrant from Scotland, and he ended up here. And his name was Thomas Kennedy. And every year, the highest award that they give out in the Maryland legislature is the Thomas Kennedy Award, named after a person who was a delegate from Hagerstown in Washington County. Thomas Kennedy was the delegate that served from 1817 until his death in 1832. And he passed and fought for and got passed what's called the Jew Bill. And I don't know if you know this, but Ben Cardin himself is a recipient of the Thomas Kennedy Award. Ladies and gentlemen, a great U.S. Senator. Please welcome to the podium U.S. Senator Ben Cardin.
Tom River, thank you so much for those nice comments. I don't get those comments too often, so thank you very much. I appreciate that very much. It's always good to be here on the C&O Canal. I also want to acknowledge that yesterday at this time I wasn't certain I was going to be here. We were doing some things in the United States Senate. But about 11 o'clock last night, Senator Van Hollen and I got a reprieve. We actually passed a bipartisan arrangement so that we didn't have a debt crisis and didn't pay our bills. Now, we should never have been in that point, that close to a default. But I think it's encouraging that we had a true bipartisan agreement, Democrats and Republicans working together, and we were able to get meaningful bill passed. We need to do more of that in Washington. So I was pleased that I could get that done, but also be here with you all. So I want to do that. Joe, you lost a little bit of credibility. Yes, you're a great engineer, but I think you're a pretty good speaker also. Now, I'm going to confess. Our federal delegation, Congressman Trone, Senator Van Hollen, and myself, we're not that educated in engineering. But we know how to get money, to get you the resources you need. So I think this is a pretty good combination. The talent you have here at the National Park Service and our federal delegation getting you the resources, and look at the results. So we are proud of Team Maryland. We work together. Congressman Trone, one of the key members of the Appropriations Committee in the House of Representatives, has delivered for the people of Washington County and for the people of this region on the C&O Canal. And Chris Van Hollen, a member of the Appropriations Committee, has worked tirelessly in regards to the C&O Canal and so many other projects for Maryland. I am proud to be the senior senator. And by the way, I still have, I think it's, if I say this correctly, I still have 19 months and 1 day and 23 minutes. So I'm still going to be around for a while, and I am proud being the senior senator, keeping our team together. And county commissioner and member of the House of Delegates, this is a team effort. We work with the county, we work with the state, we work with the federal government to get the resources. And Tom, I do remember that cold day, and I do remember doing the work on Big Slackwater. We look for any way we can get you some help. That was during the American Rescue of the ARA funds. We got your money then. We got your money under the National Park Service. And I dare to say this word, we're going to get you help under earmarks. We'll do anything we can so that you can preserve this national treasure that happens to be located here in the state of Maryland. And to Tina, let me tell you, yes, you are our leader here on the CNO. I don't know what you did right in life. Now, I'm a Maryland senator, so I love the CNO Canal, but I also love Fort McHenry, and you have both of them. You got both assignments. You did something right, and you're doing a great job. We appreciate everything that you're doing. Look, this is exciting. I'll go and confess, I haven't walked the entire trail from one end to the other or biked it, but I do it in about 2 to 3 miles is a nice walk for me, or if I'm biking, 10 miles is nice. But I tell you, I know a lot of people who use the trail for longer ventures, and if they have to go off the trail, if they have to go onto these county roads, it's not safe. It's dangerous. So this is a matter of making sure that we keep this park, first and foremost, safe for the millions of users that understand just the benefit of being part of history and being able to see the beauty and recreation that this offers. And it's our responsibility to make sure that we preserve it with historical integrity and with safety. And you did that, Joe. And we're so proud about that. The integrity is here, the safety is here, and it's going to be enjoyed by generations to come. So I can't wait to see you with gray hair walking down here making sure that the work you did paid off. We're going to hold you accountable to that. Make sure that we get, look, this is a challenge. When you come out into the river, you have climate change, you've got floods, you've got all types of challenges in order to preserve this incredible asset that we have here. And I am so proud of the National Park Service, everything you are doing to keep that in the state that it is. I want to mention something about our non-governmental or our community activists who have worked with us. One of the great things about the CNO Canal, as a person who likes to get enough votes to get elected, it's nice to know the relationship you have with the community. It makes our job a lot easier. And to the Advisory Commission, the work you do to me is critically important. Now, as you know, we got the debt ceiling done 3 days before the deadline. We have a September deadline to make sure we reauthorize that commission. I am focused on making sure that gets done. There's legislation pending to do that. I've talked to the committees. I'm optimistic we'll get it done. And I thank you for your service, and I can tell you Team Maryland will be there to continue to support these efforts. This is a great day for all of us.
Gosh, let's please give the senator another round of applause. That was magnificent. That was with no notes. That was incredible. A couple of folks I always want to introduce. Number one, I don't know if you know, everybody here, what the CNO Canal Trust is. It's a 501c3 fundraising organization. It is the fundraising friend, arm, partner of the CNO Canal National Historical Park. I'm proud to say I was a charter board member of that wonderful trust, and here today is our president, John Gutman. Where are you, John? Can you wait? There he is, right there. Give him a round of applause. Thank you, John, for being here today. Also, a longtime friend of the CNO Canal, and also a longtime friend of craft beverages, is the Western Maryland Ben Cardin's representative. Robin Summerfield is here today. So there he is right there. Good to see you, Robin. Thank you for being here today. It was a great picture of you after Delfest this past weekend. He was laying on the floor. He had to pour beer for 12 hours. That's a tough job. You got to imagine. Another great friend, by the way, of tourism here in Washington County and also all across the great state of Maryland is our congressman from the 6th District, Congressman David Trone, and it is my absolute pleasure to introduce to you a person who is a businessman. He understands how to run things under budget, and he's a great congressman and a friend of Washington County. Please welcome to the podium David Trone, our congressman.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Who thinks we ought to go fishing with those guys right now? I think the senator and I are definitely going to go fishing after this. I've had enough of this suit coat all day. You took yours off. That's why you're the senior senator. He knows. I just want to mention quickly again, how unbelievably fortunate Maryland has been to have a U.S. senator that just loves Western Maryland. Just loves all the beauty, the projects, the folks and the people here in Western Maryland. And so can we get another round of applause for Senator Ben Cardin? And Tina and I grew up together in the same town. Am I younger than you? A little bit, but maybe not. But it's unusual to find someone that grew up in East Berlin, Pennsylvania. So we connected immediately, and we've been out here on many, many different events. But I want to thank everybody. It's, as you guys have said, it's a team effort. This is a heck of a team to do a project this complex. Right out in the middle of nature, 12 months of the year, all the weather and the problems you had to deal with. You got it right. I'm not an engineer. Senator are not engineers. Thank God I'm married to one. But that's a scary proposition, doing that work on a moving body of water, like this. So congratulations, and really a job well done. This takes your breath away, doesn't it? Just beautiful. So 5 million folks come here every year. It's hard to believe. Wow. All through the C&O Canal. But it's $100 million of business extra revenue that's generated. So this investment, it's about our children and their children, but it's also driving the economy. There's 1,300 jobs that are supported by this investment and the success up and down the C&O Canal. And we're fortunate. I live on the southern part of it, and my wife and I often go walking on the C&O Canal, which is literally backs up to our development. So just a phenomenal place to be. It's phenomenal to be here. So I'm looking forward to Jeff Klein and John Barr getting the fishing rods out. About a half an hour we can go. We're going to catch bass, right? There ought to be some here, I'm sure. Actually, I don't have a fishing license, and I have a bad story about when I last time was fishing without a license. It didn't work out well for me. We were fined. But anyway, it's great to be here, and congratulations on the award again. What a great, beautiful day. Congrats again. Tina, you guys, you knocked it out of the park.
Congressman David Trone, give another round of applause. Thank you. I think the only fishing he's going to be doing is fishing for votes. So thank you very much, Congressman. My next, our final speaker, and before everybody goes, by the way, we got to do a group photo. They keep reminding me this. We got to have a group photo of all of this for history, because some of us have been around a long time, but there is no truth to the rumor that John Barr was actually here when they broke ground on the canal in 1828. That's just a rumor. But John Barr is a great friend of not only tourism, but he's a true philanthropist. He does a lot of amazing things, very, very low-key, very under the radar. I don't know if you know this. He saved a small country one-room schoolhouse in this county that was going to be torn down. He did that on his own. He is our president of the county commissioners. He knows of the true value of tourism in this county, because visitors come here by the millions. They spend money and they leave. And they take with them beautiful memories of Washington County. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the podium our president, John Barr. John?
Well, thank you, Tom. It's certainly a pleasure to be here this morning. Thanks to everyone for participating today to honor this great event. Senator Cardin, thank you. Congressman Trone, thank you. Tina, Joe, just an amazing. I have to say, off the bat, I guess, is Tom knows this from years past, that every day in Washington County is a beautiful day. And it didn't fail me today. It's just absolutely gorgeous, and we are so appreciative. On behalf of county government, again, I can't say enough about the economic development or the economic impact of this project, what it means to this community. 43% of the towpath is within the bounds of Washington County. And I also have to say Washington County is the first Washington County out of 31 across this country. So we're just so proud of everything here in Washington County. But 43%, or roughly 78 miles of the towpath, is hundreds of thousands of folks, millions actually, every year that transverse through Washington County. And we are so happy to know that they're here, they're enjoying Washington County and this fine venue. We hope they continue to come back. We want them to be safe first and foremost. We want them to spend their money and leave with a smile on their face. It's just a great thing for our community. Many of the citizens of Washington County, I'm not sure, have a full understanding and the impact of the canal towns of Hancock, Williamsport, yes, even Sharpsburg, the economics of people staying and visiting and just giving to this community. One of the challenges of being the last speaker on the list, many of my speaking points have already been touched on, and I don't want to be redundant or take your time, but a couple things I do want to share. Through tireless efforts and unwavering dedication, this project emerged as a shining example of our commitment to the past, the present, and the future, Joe. So we just continue to say thank you. A couple other points I have is you've heard about the lock houses. The lock houses in Washington County is home to several historic lock houses along the canal, including Lock House 44 near Williamsport, Lock House 46 at Four Locks, and Lock House 49 at Big Pool. These lock houses provide a glimpse into the canal's history and offer opportunities for visitors to learn and explore. Again, on behalf of Washington County government and all of its nearly 150,000 citizens, we can't say thank you enough for the efforts here, the restoration, the working arrangement that we have with the National Park Service. Your new headquarters for the canal is in Williamsport, where it should be, and everything's great. Everything's working out. We've had numerous meetings, and collaboration is fantastic. And again, we say thank you. I'm going to ask Commissioner Vice President Jeff Klein to come up here. He can take his pictures later. And Delegate, once you come too, I've done enough running at the mouth. I'm going to let Jeff read we have a certificate. Tina, you want to come up? We have a certificate of recognition. And I'm going to let Jeff read this.
He gave me a microphone. Look at it. I'll be brief. As a former Williamsport Town Councilman back in the days, Mayor Jim McLeep at the time thought about our history in the canal, how it's developed there, and we coined the phrase "remembering the past to ensure the future." And surely that was emphasized here today by everyone. So thank you for your indulgence. And Delegate Valentine, thank you for coming up. On behalf of the Board of County Commissioners, we'd like to present the certificate of recognition to the C&O National Historical Park. It's a couple sentences long. No wonder you passed this off to me. Yeah, thank you very much. That's why you're president. The Board of Commissioners proudly presents this certificate to the C&O Canal Historical Park for their exceptional efforts in the reconstruction of the historic stone walls and towpath at McMahon's Mill to Lock 42. Their dedication to preserving our heritage and commitment to sustainable design have greatly contributed to our community. We extend our sincerest congratulations on receiving the Excellence in History, Preservation, and Sustainable Design Award in 2023. Thank you for your invaluable contributions in stabilizing this area for future generations to enjoy. Congratulations. Very proud of this day as well. Thank you. Mr. Reifert?
Well, we beat the time limit to finish up before 12 noon, so that's not so bad. We're going to pose for a picture up here celebrating this grand opening of the finished section. And I am reminded, when you talked about the history and heritage here, there are roughly, what is it, Tina, 450 total National Park System units, service? About 450 units? 440 National Park Service units throughout the country. This particular unit has 5% of all historic structures in the entire Park Service system. And that deserves a round of applause for their great and wonderful work with that. Now, speaking of the National Park Service, if you are a member of the green and gray, as they say, a member of the National Park Service, would you raise your hands? Just raise your hands. National Park Service staffers. Let's give all of them a round of applause for doing this event, for finishing this project, and making Washington County a great place to live and work. Thank you all very much, and let's pose for the photo, folks.